On this episode of Game Shack, I set a course for fun as I review the new Star Trek game pack for the 4KP from AtGames and let you guys know about any kind of issues there might be and if this is something you might want to think about picking up. All that and more coming up next. Hey everybody, welcome on back into the Game Shack. I am your host JDV for Evil Genius Entertainment. Thanks for stopping on by again. If you can help us out by giving us a thumbs up, it really does help a channel like this. Subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell if you have. Okay, so right off the bat, I paid 15 bucks for these games, downloaded them from AtGames website. They're about 1.5 gigs total, so if that matters to you, nothing hard about doing it, nothing complicated or anything like that. Upload it fine. Now, right off the bat, these are not the, it's not next generation. It's not the Stern version of their pinball. It's not the 25th anniversary version or the original Star Trek pinball game based on the motion picture. No, these are 3 original Star Trek themed games from Zen. And what you're going to get are 3 different Star Trek games based on the Kelvin timeline, the movie that came out about 12, 13 years ago, Star Trek Discovery, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So if you're a fan of any one of those shows or properties, this might be of interest to you too. Now, these games themselves are not as good as Star Trek The Next Generation or the Stern pinball game, and that's not really a big surprise. Those are 2 of the highest rated real-world pinball games of all time. So it's probably not a surprise that these aren't quite as good, and they're not. They're okay. I mean, they have nice little in-games. The graphics look pretty good, and I guess that's one thing I should say right off the bat in terms of the good, is that these games are very well emulated. I did not experience any glitching or a stutter or anything like that. Apparently there has been a little bit of stutter reported, but I haven't experienced any of it, and I played it for maybe 3 or 4 hours total so far, so I haven't noticed any kind of tearing of the screen, anything like that. You are going to have some pinball flipper delay, however, and that's going to be about what you're going to experience on ADDAMS Family. It's about like a click boom, click boom. It's like a half of a beat of a delay. Now that flipper delay problem goes across all Zen games, and they are working very hard to try to fix that. They just issued out a press statement, I think 3 days ago, saying that they are really going all in with Zen. They're using computer AI. They're really trying to figure out why we're having this lag. I mean, the reason why we're having it is because it uses Unreal Engine 5, which is a very complicated, big program, and that's to kind of future-proof their pinball games moving forward. But until they have worked out how exactly to emulate that on the hardware here, it's going to be a little bit of a problem. So just be aware, if that flipper lag from ADDAMS Family is a deal breaker for you, then it's going to be a deal breaker for you on these games, at least until it's fixed. So all these games play really well, and I think they're very well emulated. I can't really tell the difference between them and the versions I have on Steam. I mean, they play basically the same. However, there is a big problem with these games, in my opinion, and that is that there is not an apron mode available for any of these games yet. And apron mode basically is that you just punch into the playfield and you eliminate some of the dead space on the playfield. So at a game like Deep Space Nine here, maybe I'll cut to a close-up. You can see like there's 5 inches of dead space at the top of the playfield. There's like 2 or 3 inches of dead space on the bottom of the playfield, and there's 1 inch to 2-3 inches of dead space on the sides of the game. And what that is going to do is make the pinball on the game seem very, very small, maybe 1/3 of the size of a real pinball. Here you can see it compared with a real pinball, and you can see that that real pinball is quite significantly bigger than the virtual pinball, and that's a shame because this is a 32-inch monitor. It ought to be bigger, and say, well, all the pinballs are going to look small on this monitor. That's not true. If you look at TX Sector, the ball is noticeably bigger on that game by almost maybe 1/3, I mean 1/4 at least. It's much, much bigger, and it should be noticed that those games don't have apron mode either. And it's a real world game, so they didn't have a whole lot of choice if they want to be accurate to those games. So without the ability to punch in to eliminate the apron, to eliminate the top part of the playfield, it really is very small, especially when you compare it to the actual real estate that they had to play with. So, I mean, I guess the bottom line on this is that these games are optimized to play well on the hardware side of it and are emulated very well. But the fact that we don't have an apron mode, we don't have a chance to change perspective or punch in, means that the ball is going to be very much smaller. And at least for me, that does affect my enjoyment of the game. Okay, so if you're kind of on the fence about this, again, it's not that much money. The one thing I would say is this: if you are looking at buying the themed version of this table, I don't know. I mean, I like the way that table looks, don't get me wrong. The Enterprise looks absolutely sweet on there. However, I can tell you right now that the next generation is a much superior game just overall than any one of these three games. If you put all three of these games together, it's still not better than one next generation pinball game. So, you know, depending on where your allegiance lies in terms of these shows or movies, you might want to hold off and get that next generation table, because I'm sure that's going to be pretty spectacular. However, if you're just buying the Kelvin Timeline table just because you love the art, okay, but just understand that these games are kind of, you know, they're okay, they're middle of the road, B, and that's about what I guess I would give this game pack, is a B. You know, nothing, it's not a fail or anything like that. The games play really well, they sound decent, we could work on that. It's just the lack of apron mode really is a kind of a bummer, just because there is so much freaking dead space on these games. Anyway, hopefully we'll have a next generation game pack. I believe it drops in 2 weeks, a little bit less than that, 13 days, something like that. So hopefully, cross your fingers, if you're a next gen fan, we're going to be seeing that game very soon. All right, everybody, you know, live long and prosper, and I'll see you guys again in the Game Shack. Mwah! What a nerd.
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.